The door wasn't supposed to be there. That's what I remember thinking as I stood ankle-deep in rainwater and ash beneath Ravex Prime, the storm howling through the fractured superstructure above us. The city had been shelled so many times the lower levels were practically forgotten, buried under collapsed transit lines and emergency bulkheads no one bothered to mark on updated maps. My HUD tagged the chamber as empty. No heat signatures. No power draw. Just an old holding cell made of reinforced alloy, its surface scarred by time and something uglier. I'd breached 17 rooms that night. Most of them had been exactly what Command said they'd be: storage, obsolete detention, nothing worth slowing down for. This one opened into silence, so complete it made my skin crawl. She was curled against the far wall. At first I thought she was dead. Too thin. Too still. Then the light from my shoulder lamp hit her eyes, and she flinched like she'd been struck. She was small, barely up to my chest, even if she stood. Pale, almost translucent skin stretched tight over sharp ribs. Her wrists were ringed with old restraints, the metal fused into scars. One side of her face bore a burn pattern I didn't recognize, deliberate and precise. No ID tag. No implant ping. Nothing in the system. 2 years, my internal log reminded me. This sector had been offline for 2 years. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking past me, like whatever had hurt her was still standing in the doorway. I lowered my rifle without realizing I'd done it. "Hey," I said, my voice sounding wrong in the echoing chamber. "You're not supposed to be here." Her breathing hitched at the sound. That was when I understood. She hadn't been forgotten by accident. She had been erased. Command came through my comm a second after the breach alarms finished echoing. Sector confirmed empty. Seal it and proceed to evac route Delta. I stared at the words scrolling across my HUD while rainwater dripped from the ceiling and pooled around my boots. Empty. That was the word they used. Like she wasn't even worth a correction. I looked back at her. She hadn't moved. Still pressed into the corner, arms wrapped around herself, shoulders trembling in a way that didn't look like cold. I'd seen fear before, real fear, battlefield fear, but this was something older. Conditioned. The kind that gets carved into someone when escape stops being a concept and becomes a memory you're punished for having. "Command," I said slowly, negative. "There's a—" "Seal the sector, Sergeant Hale," the voice snapped back. "Orbital instability is increasing. We're pulling out in 4 minutes." For minutes. Above us, Ravex Prime was dying. The storm had worsened, lightning tearing across the sky hard enough to overload shields. Somewhere higher in the city, something detonated, an ammunition depot, maybe, and the shockwave rippled down through the bones of the structure. Dust rained from the ceiling. The facility groaned like a living thing that knew it was about to collapse. I glanced at the door. Reinforced alloy. Emergency locks already cycling, triggered by the evacuation protocols. Once it's sealed, it wouldn't open again without a full power grid. She watched the door too. Not with hope, with resignation. I realized then that she knew exactly what was happening. She'd heard this before. Orders. Timers. Doors closing. People leaving. "No," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. I switched my rifle to magnetic lock and let it hang at my side. My hands felt heavy as I reached for the manual override panel. My HUD flashed warnings: unauthorized action. Disciplinary review pending. "Sergeant Hale," Command barked. "Confirm you are sealing this sector." I pressed my palm to the panel. "Negative," I said. My voice didn't shake, which surprised me. "I'm opening the cell." There was a pause, long enough that I wondered if the comm had cut out. "That detainee is not priority extraction," Command said finally. "Repeat. Not priority. Leave it." It. I pulled the lever. The door screamed as ancient servos fought against emergency lockdown. Sparks spat from the frame. For a moment, I thought it wouldn't open at all, that this was as far as I'd get. Then the lock gave way with a metallic crack that echoed down the corridor. The door slid open. She recoiled instantly, scrambling backward even though there was nowhere left to go. A thin sound tore out of her throat, half breath, half plea, and she raised her arms over her head like she was bracing for a blow. "I'm not here to hurt you," I said quickly, dropping to one knee so I wasn't towering over her. "I swear." Stupid words. Everyone who ever heard her had probably said something like that. She didn't respond. Her eyes flicked to my hands, my armor, the insignia on my chest. Marine Corps. United States. Human. Her breathing got worse. They told you things about us, didn't they? I said softly, not even sure why I asked. They told you we were monsters. Her gaze snapped to mine for the first time. That was all the answer I needed. Another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. The lights flickered, then went out completely, plunging us into emergency red. My HUD filled with warnings, structural failure imminent. Evacuate immediately. Sergeant Hale, command shouted. This is a direct order. I reached up and switched the comm off. Silence rushed in, broken only by the storm and the distant thunder of a world tearing itself apart. I looked back at her. She was shaking so badly her teeth were chattering now, but she was still watching me, waiting. I didn't think about regulations, or courts-martial, or what this would cost me. I thought about the door, about how many times it had closed on her. I held out my hand. We're leaving, I said. Right now? Together. She stared at my hand like it was a trap. Then the ceiling cracked, and a chunk of concrete smashed into the floor between us, spraying debris. She cried out and curled inward again, and something inside my chest snapped clean in half. I didn't wait for permission, hers or anyone else's. I crossed the cell in 3 strides, carefully scooping her up like she weighed nothing at all. She went rigid in my arms, terror locking every muscle. I've got you, I said, over and over. I've got you. I'm not letting go. As I carried her through the collapsing corridor, alarms screaming and fire licking along the walls, I understood something with terrifying clarity. The moment that door opened, there was no version of this where I walked away unchanged. And neither did she. If you've watched this far, then this story is really interesting to you. Please confirm it by clicking like under this video. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will help me understand what story to publish for you next. Write in the comments who the alien woman in this story resembles, and who you would like to see in the next story. Let's move on. They moved her onto the carrier like she was a live explosive, careful, distant, afraid of doing the wrong thing, and somehow making it worse. The Vigilant Mercy wasn't a military ship. Not really. It was a retrofitted civilian hauler, patched together with humanitarian logos and outdated shielding, meant to scoop up survivors after worlds broke and move them somewhere safer. Or at least less dangerous. Its corridors were wider, its lights softer, the air recycled with actual concern for comfort instead of efficiency. None of it mattered to her. The moment I handed her over to the medical team, she panicked. She clutched at my armor with a strength that didn't match her fragile frame, fingers digging into the plates like anchors. Her breath came in sharp, broken gasps, and a sound tore out of her that made everyone in the bay freeze. It's okay, one of the medics said gently, reaching for her arm. We just need to. She screamed. Not loud, not wild, controlled, sharp, like she'd learned exactly how much sound would bring punishment and how much would be ignored. I stepped between them without thinking. Stop, I said. All of you. Just stop. They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. The lead medic, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes, frowned at her tablet. Sergeant, she's severely malnourished. Dehydrated. We need to sedate her, get her stabilized. She's not going to let you, I said. Not without me. That got their attention. She doesn't even know you, the medic replied. I looked down at her. She'd pressed herself into my side now, forehead against my chest plate, trembling so hard I could feel it through the armor. Her hands had found the fabric straps near my shoulder and were twisted there like she was afraid I might vanish if she loosened her grip. She knows enough, I said quietly. We tried it my way. I stayed. I stood beside the medical cot while they worked, narrating everything they did in a low, steady voice. What the scanners were, why the lights moved, why no one was hurting her. I didn't know if she understood the words, but she understood the tone. Her breathing slowed from panicked gasps to shaky inhales. They offered her water. She wouldn't take it. Nutrient paste. She turned her head away. When a medic reached out too fast, she flinched so hard she nearly fell off the cot, and I had to catch her again. Every touch that wasn't mine felt like an attack to her nervous system. She's refusing intake, the medic said after the 3rd failed attempt. At this rate, she'll eat, I said. I wasn't sure why I believed that. Just not like this. Hours passed. The orbital strike hit Ravex Prime while we were still docked. The impact shook the carrier violently, throwing equipment and personnel alike. Someone shouted about hull stress. Another voice yelled about emergency launch procedures. Through the small viewport above the bay, I saw the sky outside the city flash white, then orange, then a rolling wave of black smoke. The facility where I'd found her disappeared in a bloom of fire. If I'd followed orders, she would have died there. The thought made me nauseous. They launched anyway. The vigilant Mercy tore free from the docking clamps as debris rained down around us. Engines screaming as we punched through the upper atmosphere. Gravity fluctuated wildly, and for a moment I thought I might lose my footing. She didn't scream this time. She curled tighter against me, burying her face against my chest as the ship shuddered. I wrapped one arm around her instinctively, shielding her from the chaos, my other hand gripping a rail. When the turbulence finally eased and the carrier leveled out into open space, a heavy silence fell over the bay. She didn't move. She needs rest, the medic said quietly now. But Sergeant, she won't let us sedate her, or feed her, or even run half the diagnostics unless you're here. I looked down at her again. Her eyes were half-lidded, dark and glassy with exhaustion. She was awake, barely, but every muscle in her body looked like it was waiting for pain to return the moment she relaxed. "What's your name?" I asked softly. No response. "That's okay," I said. "You don't have to tell me yet." I took off my helmet and set it aside so she could see my face properly. Human, unarmed, just a man with shadows under his eyes and a scar she hadn't seen before. "My name's Ethan," I said. "Ethan Hale. I'm not leaving you." Her fingers tightened. That night, or whatever passed for night on a ship running constant emergency cycles, she finally took a sip of water. Only because I held the cup. Only because I drank first. After that, she ate 2 spoonfuls of nutrient paste. No more. Her hands shook too badly to hold the utensil, so I helped her, slow and careful, stopping the moment her breathing changed. The medics watched from a distance, whispering to each other like we were a puzzle they couldn't solve. "She won't sleep," one of them told me later. "Not fully. Every time she starts to drift, she jerks awake." I pulled a chair up beside her cot and sat down. "Then neither will I," I said. Sometime during the long hours between stars, she finally whispered her name. Lyra. It came out broken, like she hadn't used it in a long time. I repeated it back to her, just once, like a promise. And for the first time since I'd opened that door, she slept. Only as long as my hand was still there. She told me the truth 3 days after Ravex Prime burned out of the sky. Not all at once. Not cleanly. It came in fragments. Pieces she dropped between long silences like she was testing whether the universe would punish her for speaking. The carrier had settled into a slow drift beyond contested space. Engines idling. Crew running on exhaustion and habit. Lyra sat on the medical cot wrapped in a thermal blanket. One I'd brought from my quarters after realizing she hated the sterile, white ones the medics used. Her knees were drawn to her chest, bare feet tucked beneath her, and Tinny lying flat against her skull whenever someone passed the doorway. She only relaxed when it was just me. "They said you would finish it." Her voice was barely audible, thin as thread. I almost missed it. I looked up from the ration bar I was pretending to eat. "Finish what?" She swallowed. Her throat worked like it hurt to use it. "What they started." I didn't answer right away. I'd learned that silence was safer than rushing her. Words had been used against her for a long time. "They told me humans were worse," she continued. "That when your soldiers came, you would not pretend. You would not lie. You would break what was left because it amused you." My jaw tightened. "They said my fear would make you laugh." I set the ration bar down carefully, afraid of crushing it without realizing. "Who told you that, Lyra?" "All of them," she said. "Guards. Traitors. The ones who came to inspect." Her hands clenched in the blanket. "They said I was being saved for you. That I was being kept useful." I felt sick. I'd seen war crimes. I'd seen civilians used as leverage, as shields, as numbers on a screen. But this was something colder. This was systematic. Designed. "They told me my people sold me," she went on, staring at the wall like it might swallow her if she looked away. "That I was payment. That my name had been erased because names make things harder to own." I thought about the empty files. The missing ID. The way the system had tagged her cell as obsolete. "They told me no one was coming," she said. "That even if the war ended, even if the Velthari lost, I would stay there. That humans would agree it was simpler." Her breathing sped up, shallow and uneven. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, making myself smaller in her line of sight. "Lyra," I said gently, "look at me." She didn't at first. Then she did. Her eyes were enormous up close. Dark, reflective, holding too much memory for someone who looked like she'd barely survived childhood. There was no accusation in them. Just confusion. You didn't, she said. You didn't do what they said. No, I replied. I didn't. You didn't touch me like I was, she faltered, antenna twitching. Like cargo. I shook my head. You're not cargo. You didn't ask what I was worth, she whispered. I felt something crack open in my chest. No, I said again. I asked what your name was. She stared at me like that mattered more than anything else I could have said. For 2 years, she continued, voice steadier now. Every being who looked at me saw a thing. A debt. A body. Something to trade, to punish, to threaten someone else with. She hesitated. When you look at me, I do not know what you see. I answered without thinking. A person. The word landed between us, heavy and strange. She repeated it slowly, testing the sound. A person. Yes. Her antenna lifted slightly, then fell again, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to hope. That is not how it works, she said. Not for my kind. Not after this. Then maybe that's something we change, I said. She studied my face like she was trying to find the lie. You are strange, Ethan Hale. I let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Yeah, I get that a lot. She shifted on the cot, wincing slightly as bruises pulled. The medics said healing would take time. Bones could be repaired. Scars faded. Trust was something else entirely. They told me humans take, she said. If not bodies, then loyalty. If not loyalty, then obedience. I leaned back in my chair. We do plenty of that, I admitted. I won't pretend otherwise. She tilted her head, listening. But we also choose, I continued. And sometimes we choose wrong. Sometimes we choose convenience over doing the right thing. I opened that door because in that moment, leaving you there would have broken something in me I don't think I could have fixed. Her gaze softened. Just a little. You chose me, she said. Yes. Not because you had to. No. Not because of trade. Or bond. No. She was quiet for a long time after that. When she finally spoke again, her voice was different. Still fragile, but steadier. Anchored. Then you are the first, she said. The first being in 2 years who saw me and did not decide what to take. I swallowed hard. Outside the viewport, stars slid past in silent indifference. The universe didn't care about doors, or choices, or what it cost to open them. But in that small medical bay, with Lyra wrapped in a borrowed blanket and learning how to exist again, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't just protecting her anymore. I was becoming the proof that everything she'd been told about humans was wrong. And that was a responsibility I hadn't asked for, but one I wasn't walking away from. The mutiny didn't start with gunfire. It started with silence. The Vigilant Mercy was too quiet for a ship carrying refugees, medics, and a skeleton security crew. No background chatter on the internal channels. No footsteps in the corridor outside medical. Even the hum of the engines felt wrong. Too steady, like someone had overridden the adaptive noise dampeners. I noticed it because Lyra noticed it. She was sitting upright on the cot for the first time without prompting, the blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. Her antennae lifted, trembling, not flat in fear, not relaxed either. Alert. They are coming, she said. Who? I asked, already standing. She didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on the doorway. The first explosion hit the aft section a second later. The deck lurched violently, throwing me into the wall. Emergency lights snapped on, bathing the corridor in harsh red. The ship's AI began screaming warnings. Internal breach. Command authority compromised. All personnel. Gunfire followed. Close. Human weapons. Stay here, I told Lyra, grabbing my rifle from the rack. Lock the door behind me. Her hand shot out and wrapped around my wrist. No, she said. One word. Absolute. Panic surged through her so sharply it was almost physical. If you leave, I'll be right outside, I said, forcing calm into my voice. I promise. She stared at me like she didn't believe in promises anymore. I can't fight if they get in here, I added. I need you safe. Another explosion rocked the ship, closer this time. The lights flickered. Lyra flinched hard, memories dragging her backward whether she wanted them to or not. Please, I said quietly. Trust me. Her grip loosened, just enough. I sealed the medical bay from the outside and turned toward the sound of gunfire. The mutineers were security contractors. Private. Bot. They'd been hired to escort the carrier through neutral space, but someone higher up had offered them more. A lot more. Enough to forget humanitarian law and remember how profitable cargo could be. I caught sight of them near the central junction. Four armed men moving with practiced ease, faces hidden behind tactical visors. One of them was dragging a medic by the collar. "Where is she?" he demanded. I didn't hesitate. The first two went down before they knew where I was. The third got a shot off. Plasma burned across my shoulder, hot enough to steal my breath and nearly drop me. I returned fire on instinct, training taking over as pain tried to drown everything else. The fourth ran. Lyra. I breathed into my calm, switching it on just long enough to send one message. Hide. Whatever happens, hide. No response. The corridor filled with smoke. Alarms wailed. I forced myself upright, teeth clenched, blood soaking into my armor. Every movement sent lightning through my arm, but I pushed forward anyway. I was halfway back to medical when the ship shuddered violently, hard enough to knock me off my feet. Unauthorized override detected, the AI intoned. Emergency separation in progress. They were trying to take her. I dragged myself up and ran. The medical bay door was open. Lyra was gone. For a moment, the world narrowed to a ringing in my ears. Then I saw the trail, footprints smeared with blood that wasn't hers, leading toward the auxiliary hangar. I followed them. The hangar was chaos. Crates overturned. One of the carrier's shuttles warming up, engines whining. Two bodies on the deck, mutineers. And Lyra, backed against the bulkhead, clutching a fallen sidearm she didn't know how to use. The man advancing on her laughed. "They told you humans would come back," he said. "Looks like they were right." I didn't shout. I fired. The recoil nearly tore the rifle from my injured shoulder, but the shot landed true. The man collapsed mid-step, disbelief frozen on his face. Lyra didn't move. I crossed the distance between us in seconds and dropped to my knees in front of her, setting the rifle aside. My vision swam, the edges darkening. "It's over," I said. "You're safe." She looked at me like she didn't understand the words. "You are bleeding," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "Guess I am." She reached for me, and then everything went black. When I woke, I was in a different place. Not the carrier. A field hospital. Temporary. Stark white lights. My arm immobilized, shoulder wrapped in synth bandages. A dull ache replaced the sharp pain, which meant the meds were doing their job. "Sergeant Ethan Hale," a voice said. "You're awake." I turned my head slowly. A captain stood at the foot of the bed, expression unreadable. "During the incident aboard the Vigilant Mercy, you were presumed killed in action. Your biometrics flatlined for 6 minutes during emergency evac." I frowned. "Lyra." "She was recovered," the captain said. "Alive." Relief hit me so hard it hurt. "However," he continued, "due to your unauthorized engagement, deviation from post, and involvement in an internal conflict tied to classified trafficking interests, your status has been complicated." "What does that mean?" I asked. He met my eyes. "Officially, Sergeant, you're missing in action." I stared at him. "For how long?" I asked. "As long as it takes," he said quietly. "And in the meantime, the individual you extracted believes you didn't survive the mutiny." The room felt very small. Somewhere, Lyra was waking up to an empty medical bay, to another door that had closed. And for the first time since I'd opened that cell on Ravex Prime, I wasn't there to stop it. The thought terrified me more than the pain, more than the court-martial I knew was coming, because I'd promised her I wouldn't leave. And now, from her point of view, I had. They brought me back from the dead with paperwork. That was the first thing I thought as the transport shuttle cut through the docking perimeter of New Anchorage Station, its hull still scorched from half a dozen engagements I wasn't allowed to talk about. No ceremony, no announcement, just a quiet transfer under a different name, a sealed file, and a warning not to speak unless spoken to. Missing in action was convenient. Dead was even better. Alive was a problem. New Anchorage hung above a blue-white gas giant like a scar that refused to heal. Layers of rotating habitats, diplomatic rings, and military oversight stacked on top of each other in the name of stability. It smelled like recycled air and politics. I'd fought on half a dozen front lines, but this place made my skin itch worse than any battlefield. They marched me into the tribunal chamber in restraints. Not because I was dangerous, because they needed me to look like I was. The room was circular, tiered seating rising around a central floor where I stood alone. Flags, human and alien, hung side by side, their symbols carefully balanced to suggest equality that didn't really exist. Admirals, diplomats, trade representatives, people who'd never opened a door they couldn't close again. My name echoed when it was read aloud. Former Sergeant Ethan Hale, United States Marine Corps. Former. The word landed harder than any punch. You are charged, the presiding officer began, with unauthorized extraction of a non-priority civilian, dereliction of duty, assault during an internal security incident, and interference with interspecies trade agreements. I kept my eyes forward. Weeks of silence had given me time to decide something important. I wasn't going to beg. Do you plead guilty or not guilty? The officer asked. Guilty, I said. A ripple went through the chamber. They hadn't expected that. On all counts. Someone asked sharply. Yes, sir. Murmurs. Confusion. Annoyance. Then why are we here? A diplomat snapped. I lifted my head. Because you want to send her back, I said. The room went quiet. A Caribbean representative leaned forward, antennae stiff with restrained anger. The female you extracted is the property of a consortium recognized by interstellar law. Her return has been formally requested. Property. I felt my hands clench inside the restraints. She was sold, I said evenly. She was tortured for 2 years in a facility you all conveniently forgot existed. That is an internal Caribbean matter, the representative replied coldly. Not a human concern. I laughed. It came out harsh and ugly, and I didn't bother stopping it. She was held in a Velthury black site under your signature trade agreements, I said. Don't insult everyone in this room by pretending you didn't know. A human admiral leaned forward. Sergeant Hale, you are not here to present accusations. You are here to answer for your conduct. Then answer me this. I shot back. If she wasn't priority, why did private contractors try to steal her off a refugee ship? Why did they kill medical staff to get to her? Why was her name erased from every database that should have protected her? No one answered. I took a breath. You want to send her back because it's easier, I said. Because admitting what happened to her would crack open a system that profits from pretending some lives matter less. The presiding officer's voice hardened. You are out of line. Then court-martial me, I said. Strip my rank. Lock me up. Do whatever you want. I met their eyes one by one. But you are not handing her over. The Caribbean representative hissed softly. You speak with passion, human. But passion does not override law. No, I agreed. But evidence does. I nodded toward the screen behind them. Play the files, I said. They hesitated. Then someone did. The chamber filled with images, grainy footage pulled from hidden facility archives, security feeds recovered from the Ravex Prime ruins, logs extracted from the mutineers' encrypted channels. Lyra's cell, her restraints, transaction records tied to names sitting in that very room. Gasps, shouts, outrage, some genuine, some performative. The Caribbean representative went pale. This is fabricated. It's authenticated, a Xenolegal analyst said quietly. Cross-verified. I exhaled slowly. You told her no one was coming, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. You told her humans would finish what you started. And when I opened that door, you decided I was the problem. I stepped forward as far as the restraints allowed. She is not your debt. She is not your mistake to hide. She is a person who survived something none of you had the courage to stop. Silence fell again, heavier this time. Finally, the presiding officer spoke. The Caribbean female has formally requested asylum. My heart skipped. She has also, he continued, specifically requested you. I looked up sharply. She did. A flicker of something like discomfort crossed his face. She has refused all representation not approved by you. She will not testify, eat regularly, or cooperate unless she believes you are alive. The room blurred for a moment. She thinks I'm dead, I said quietly. Yes, he replied. Until now. I swallowed. What happens to her? I asked. The officer exchanged looks with the others. That depends on how far you are willing to take this, Sergeant. I didn't hesitate. As far as it goes. The tribunal recessed an hour later. Charges reduced. Sentence pending. Diplomatic fallout contained with words like unprecedented and regrettable. And somewhere in this station, behind another door, Lyra was waiting. This time, I wasn't going to let it close again. I didn't see her right away. New Anchorage Station was a maze of polished corridors and observation decks designed to impress diplomats and intimidate everyone else. I walked through it under escort, my restraints gone, but my status still uncertain, suspended between soldier and civilian, asset and liability. They stopped outside a quiet wing marked refugee liaison, temporary housing. The door slid open. Lyra was standing inside, not curled in a corner, not pressed against the wall, standing. She was thinner than she should have been, still healing, but there was color in her skin now. Her antennae were lifted high, not flat in fear, not trembling. Alert, curious, alive. She was wearing human clothes, simple fabric, loose sleeves, nothing that marked her as property or payment. For a moment, she just stared at me. Then she took one step forward. I stopped breathing. They told me you were dead, she said. Her voice didn't break. That scared me more than if it had. They said you died saving me. I almost did, I replied. But I didn't. Her hands clenched at her sides. I waited, she said. Every day, I waited for the door to open again. I crossed the room slowly, giving her time to pull back if she needed to. She didn't. When I stopped in front of her, close enough to see the faint scars that would never fully fade, she looked up at me, not with fear, not with worship, but with something steady. You came back, she said. I promised, I answered. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The universe felt very far away. Wars, tribunals, treaties, all of it faded into background noise. They granted me asylum, she said finally. They said I am free. I nodded. You are. She tilted her head, studying me. Freedom is loud, she admitted. And frightening. Yeah, I said softly. It usually is. She hesitated, then reached out and took my hand. Not gripping, not clinging, just holding. I choose you, she said. I opened my mouth to argue, to remind her she didn't owe me anything, that she didn't need to anchor herself to the first human who hadn't hurt her. But she shook her head, already reading the thought in my face. Not because you opened the door, she said. Not because of debt, or gratitude, or what they did to me. Her grip tightened slightly. I choose you because you saw me when I was nothing, and you told me I was wrong. Something hot burned behind my eyes. I don't want to be saved, she continued. I want to walk forward. With you. As equals. I let out a shaky breath. I'm not much of a future planner, I admitted. I don't even know what I'm supposed to be anymore. Her antennae twitched. A gesture I'd learned meant amusement. Then we learn, she said. Together. I squeezed her hand. Outside the viewport, stars drifted past, cold, distant, uncaring. Somewhere out there, the war went on. Doors still closed. People were still erased. But here, in this moment, one door had stayed open. And Lyra, who had been treated like nothing for 2 years, stepped through it by choice. So did I? That was enough. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Write in the comments what moment in this story impressed you the most. And also check out the other videos that just appeared on your screen. See you in the next video.